Cool. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
This is Andy.
Hello.
Andy works down at the University of, South Bank University. Isn't it?
Yeah, London South Bank University. So
as a course director.
yeah, I run the course, the game development course down there.
Oh, fab.
Yeah.
And he's going to talk to us today about mod music and kind of chip music.
Yeah.
Some of the music, was the music we were playing just now stuff that you'd...
Yeah.
And it's fantastic, isn't it? Even though these speakers are maybe...
we had to turn the bass down because the poor Amiga.
Oh, were they?
I think it was overloading it. Yeah.
Cool. And 11.
Hey. All right. Hello, everybody. So today I'd just like to talk a little bit about chiptunes, and there's different types of chiptunes, and why I love them, why I think they're useful, why they're something you should know about, and why mods and tracker music perhaps is something you should know about as well. And there's lots and lots of reasons for that. So I've only got 30 minutes, so I might talk a little bit fast, but if anyone misses anything, just grab me afterwards and quiz me, okay? So what's a chiptune? Well, this is a difficult subject because lots of people associate chiptunes with just the Gameboy, right? Because of the Gameboy scene and concerts, chiptune concerts tend to be heavily predominantly, at least quite commonly, dominated by chiptune musicians who use LSDJ, which is a cartridge you can put in your Game Boy to write music using the Game Boy's sound chip. However, that's not all that chiptunes are. And actually the name chiptune never even referred to console music back in the day. So that's another thing I'm going to talk about a little bit here. So it's not just Game Boy. Yeah. And anyone that says that is wrong.
Or really young.
Both. Right? So the first thing to talk about is the Amiga. Okay. Now the Amiga was a lovely old computer that was out in the late 80s, early 90s. And the Amiga was a very, very powerful home computer for the time. It had far greater specs than your average home PC, and you could do all sorts of things on it that you couldn't do on a bog standard desktop computer. Like when the Amiga first came out, PCs only had buzzers for sound, for example, and the Amiga had 4 channels of independent sound from samples. Okay, now chiptunes on the Amiga were created to save memory. So the idea was that your tune would take up not very much space in memory at all. And the best way to do that is to have really, really tiny samples. Okay, so some of it grew out of the cracking scene, because obviously if you're bolting intros onto crack games, it's terrible behaviour. You'd be trying to have as small a tune as possible in order to achieve that, because the space on the diskette was so limited because the game was taking up most of the data space on the disk. So actually it grew a little bit out of necessity if you wanted to tag your latest crack. But chiptunes also exist in the same sort of way on PCs as well, right? So it's not something that just lived on the Amiga. Very shortly after the Amiga became popular, PCs started to have more and more powerful sound cards. In fact, you could even build your own plug-in hardware to emulate a digital to audio converter, and you could plug that into the back of a PC back in the day and avoid the horrible beeper of death, which was the only way to get sound. Okay, so tracking modules developed from the Amiga onto the PC. Now, why do I love mods, and why do they still exist? Well, mods are a really clever format for storing music because they're an encapsulated format. They include all the sample data and all the note data for the tune that you're playing, right? And the lovely thing about mods is if you download a mod, you can see how the person wrote the tune. You can't really do that if you've got a WAV, a FLAC, or an MP3. You're just getting normally two stereo, a stereo pair of audio files, right? If you're downloading music in that way. But if you look at a mod, you can actually see what went into creating the tune. It's like the source code of music, yeah? And it's actually a lovely thing to teach people. If people aren't familiar with music composition, it's a great tool. It's a great tool for teaching people how to write music, because you can take somebody's track and you can actually explode it and start talking about how this bit here fitted with this bit here and how it worked together. So at this point, I'm going to talk about how mods work. Okay? So how do mods work? You've got note data, you've got sample data. MIDIs work in a similar way, but there's no sample data, it's just notes, right? mods are much cleverer than that because you've got the samples as well. It's easier for me to just show you. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple of examples of Amiga chiptunes, and I'm using this wonderful tool. This is a free port of Pro Tracker, which is one of the biggest trackers on the Amiga, ported to the PC. Now, the big difference between trackers and how you might have seen music being composed more recently is more recently, if you look at someone in a piano roll editor, it goes like this. And mods go like this. It's really the only massive difference between the two ways of writing it. So if I press play, what you're going to see is you're going to see the notes flying up the screen. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to open a tune, and we'll open up, what should we open? We'll open up a cutesy intro tune. Right? And what you can see here are different channels of activity, right, in the tune. So this channel is what's called an arpeggio. That's a very fast series of notes interacting with each other. So if I solo that channel, yeah? Makes sense? And the reason we used that technique is because we only had 4 channels, so we needed to squeeze a chord in sometime to accompany the music. And in order to achieve that, we just played the notes really close together, so your brain munges them into one sound, right? Plus it goes, which is quite nice. Right? So if I start adding channels back in, so let's put that channel back in, and we can see that's the bass channel. And as you can see every single note I put into this tune, you can actually see how the tune was made. If I mute the arpeggio channel, you could literally sit there and go, well, I wonder how the bass line in this tune works. And just listen to it. And what you're seeing there is an old technique. It's just using octaves to do a bass line. Very simple bass line technique. If you're first getting into music, use it. Okay. I turn it off again. Go here. And this is an example of another technique that you use for chiptune making and compression in tunes, which is mixing 2 elements of a song into one channel. So we've got a drum beat and a backing element running on the same channel to save space. If we mix that with the arpeggio, you can see it starts blending together and you can't really hear the separation between the 2 sets of sounds. If I put this channel on, so let's just listen to the tune. And this is another old Amiga technique, which is echoing. Using echoing to make the lead sound fatter and more sort of prominent in the mix. And what it's doing as well is it's echoing forward. So it's taking a note and it's previewing it before it hits at a lower volume to give it a bit of oomph and a bit of dynamism. All right? So if I put all the channels back on, that's what we get. Okay, so what do the samples sound like? Let's have a look. We can see that because it's a mod. Let's listen to the other sample. That sounded great, didn't it? Let's do it again. What a lovely resonance. So if we go here, that's one of the drums. So that drum's actually recorded from a C64. So I actually did the drum design on a Commodore 64, which I can show you in a minute how that works too. We've got a snare sound there. Okay. So listen to how this sound changes as I press the button. And the way that's changing is we're changing the phase of the waveform. So if you watch this visually, what you can see is that square wave is moving in position, right? So if I go like that, can you see it moving across? Right? And that's how you get that nice sort of noise in the lead, right? And again, all of these samples that I'm playing you that are just single tones are only about 32 bytes in length, right? So if you're looking at optimizing code or delivering code quickly or doing a very small download for your title, if you use this sort of music, it's a lot easier to make tiny tunes. Right, so let's go a bit further. A bit further. That's the bass tone. So the way chiptunes worked on the Amiga was, out of necessity, people wanted to make stuff that reminded people of the C64 and the days of home computing, perhaps before the Amiga. And the best way they found of doing that was using small waveforms and then being creative with how they actually organised them within a composition. Now the other thing is that these small waveforms have certain rules. So if you're using something that's up a high pitch, it'll be less bytes in length. So a lead might be 32 bytes in length. A bass might be 128 bytes in length. And obviously that kind of makes sense. The longer the wave, the deeper the sound. Yeah? Because it's looping slower. Great. So let's play another one. Here's an even simpler tune that's actually easier to follow. So this is a really cute saccharine cover of Dust in the Wind that I did. Yeah? And if I go back to the thing, what this song's composed like is this is the guitar part, the first 3 channels, okay? So this is the accompanying guitar part. And then the lead and the effects and the wind are on this channel. And then I'm hiding the snare in some of the other channels, right? But if we only play one channel, so if we start muting them, what you're only hearing is like one finger of the finger action on the guitar, right? So again, it's another nice way of seeing how somebody's put a song together. So if we go here, put another one. You can hear the accompanying part of the tune. So this is just the guitar part, so we're ignoring the lead. All right, let's put the lead back on. And over here, what you can see happening is at the start of every instance of the lead hitting, I'm bending the note. That's what those 2 notes together are. And I'm starting on the note before the note that I want it to reach and using an effect to make it reach it. The other lovely thing about mods is not only do they contain all the note data for the song and all the samples, they also contain all of the actions and the effects that you want to do within the composition as well. So here you can see this is a bending effect, 305, moving into a vibrato effect, 4C2. And all that means is if I break this note at a rate of C2 in hexadecimal, don't be frightened. Many values you can just remember work well for doing these sorts of effects. Okay, so moving away from the Amiga for a second. I'll play you a little bit of Iron Maiden just for the sake of it. So this is me doing Iron Maiden in the style of a NES game. Yeah? If Iron Maiden scored a shoot 'em up on the NES. Pew, pew, pew. I'll just play you a little bit of it. Now again, this is running a lot faster than the other tunes that I showed you, and that's in order to squeeze more effects in and make the song sound bigger. And it's doing waveform mixing. I've mixed a bass in with a drum and things like that. If we look at the channels here, this is where the drums are. This is the bass. This is the lead at the moment. And this is some accompaniment. Now, it does go a bit silly, this song, but I'm going to play you it because it's funny. Here we go. So, the reason it's going so quickly is because what I'm trying to do is move the notes quick enough that it all blends into a whole a lot easier. When you're composing in this way, you can reuse content very easily. So you can reuse a pattern or you can reuse an element very, very easily within the composition. Here's the bit that goes silly. It's the solo. So this is using lots of effects. It's using pitch. It's using like note bend, vibrato, retrig, volume. It's a bit silly. This is an effect where you're moving between 2 notes close together to give a staccato effect in hammer. There you go. So you get the point. Right, so going back. So that's the Amiga. Now the PC, what the advantage we have now with modern computers is that we can still make software that works in a very similar way, but we don't have the same limitations that, say, the Amiga did. The Amiga had 4 hardware channels that it could use with mono sound, so trackers were mostly 4-channel. If you went to higher numbers of channels, you'd lose quality. Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is a PC tracker. I'll show you a piece of music and a PC tracker. Now this is doing a lot more in terms of CPU power, channel usage, and I'll tell you how many channels it's using because it'll make you laugh. This isn't something that you might use in a game. This is more a piece of music maybe for like an introduction to an album or something, right? But it's a lot more involved and it's using a lot more sort of heavy effects. So things like filters, envelopes to move the volume of a sound up and down, and lots and lots of channels. So let's press play. Right. If I go back into the pattern, now over here, you can see this is our bass part. This is our choir. This is still a chiptune. Cool. And what this is using techniques like delaying repeated notes. It's using overlapping notes, so notes are feeding into other notes and detuning. And it's actually a very simple form of additive synthesis. So what we're doing is we're adding more and more channels to the mix in order to produce more hardcore sounds from the engine. Over here, these notes here have all got different volume attenuation. And then if I go back over here, this part here that's doing the sort of echoing is doing that by hand because it's actually got a volume envelope that fades into itself. Now we've sped up, I'll show you the lead. And the lead's echoing itself. And we're using note bend and vibrato on that. And because we've got more channels, we can put more echo on the lead and have it sort of complement the tune. Nice thing about PC trackers is, again, because we've got more space on the screen, we can see how the song's been put together on one screen. The notes moving, everything's on one screen. We don't have to worry about real estate as much as we used to do on something like the Amiga. Let's turn it off, it's going to repeat. There we go. Right. So a lot more advanced, right? The sound's a lot more sort of dynamic. You can make sounds that almost sound like real instruments. So just to show you what the actual waveforms sound like in that song, if I haven't crashed it, there we go. That's the first waveform. And you can hear it's vibrating on its own because we have that facility in modern trackers. So this is a free tracker. Filtered waveform, another waveform, another waveform, another waveform. It's much more bendy, this one. Much deeper. Right? And then if we keep going, that's it. That's literally all the sounds from the song. So if I go into the instruments and show you how instruments work, so the big difference between modern trackers and old school trackers is we have instruments in modern trackers, and we can do things like we can move volume from one point to another on every hit of the note. So what I can show you here, if I go to the fifth sample in this song, and I go like this, you can see that moving across. And it's taking that waveform and it's pushing it across and it's moving the volume up and then down. If I go like this, if I re-trigger it though, look what happens. If I go like this, what we get It's very pretty. So again, this is something that not many people know you can do with modern trackers. So retriggering of notes and doing new note actions, and just telling it, I want you to continue playing the note even if I let go of the key, right? So you can do effects like this. Okay. If I go higher, so you can do all sorts of clever effects. Now, the other great advantage of trackers over lockdown bounced audio is that you can use the note data in your code, right? So if you're doing a rhythm game or something that needs, a sequence or a guide point, instead of going through a WAV and going, that's the next bit, and put markers in your WAV, which is horrendous, and no one should ever do that or have to. You can just put a little symbol in the tracker note data itself and actually look for that in your code and then trig things within the game engine. And that's quite a common thing that still goes on now. Amusingly, lots of Wii games still use quite heavy amounts of track music, but people didn't talk very much about it. But it was a great way of syncing visuals to song elements. Now, your stuff doesn't have to sound super high-end like this. Here we go. Let's go back into our tracker. You can do really simple composition. If I take, let's do a new file. So if we make a new tracker module, I can talk about something else. Has anyone got any questions at this point? I really sound like a lecturer now, don't I? That's terrible. Yeah. Great, there we go. So I go back in. So that's how mods work. Different module formats we've covered. So now we're going to talk about waveforms. And that's a sine wave, right? So different waveforms have different characteristics when you listen to them. And different waveforms sound different when you listen to them. So if you're writing music and you're using these sorts of techniques, you have to understand what the characteristics are. So, am I running out of time, Pang? Okay, so if I go into my tracker, we're just going to draw one. All right, so we're going to say we're going to have a 64-byte waveform, and it's going to look like this. So this is a square wave. It's hard to see because of the projector. If I press play, that's what a square wave sounds like. But I can draw over it as it plays, right? I can change the shape as it plays. And that's a sine wave. Yeah, and now I'm going to do a triangle wave. This is triangle, nice and soft. Used to use that a lot on the Nintendo, the original Nintendo. Okay, and then I can do a saw wave, which is a much more sort of meaty sound. Cool. So those different waveforms sound different, yeah. So how you generate them is up to you. You could write some code to do this. You could write into hexadecimal if you wanted. I could teach you how to do that, but it would take too long. You could use an expression evaluation tool to create a waveform like this. Here we go. Let's make a sine wave in something like gold wave. So if we go up here, we can go to tool. Actually, we can go to new, make a waveform, tool, expression evaluator. If we set it to 66, and then go, oh, I love the fact that it's not actually, oh yeah, of course, that's why. Good, done it. Let's make a sine wave, and let's do a 66 as frequency. A 66 frequency sine wave will make quite a good chiptune sample. Here we go. Make it bigger, make it smaller. Right, and then I go hit this, and then we've got the start of a sine wave here on the screen, just using code. Now, if we play that, it won't do anything because it doesn't know that it should be looping that sound, but we could export that and put it into our tracker software. So the next thing I'm going to tell you about is just writing a really simple tune and some cheats. Yeah? To get you all thinking about maybe you could have a go at it. This program's free, by the way. It's Open Mod Plug Tracker. It's just totally free. You can download it. which means you can draw your own waveforms and all sorts of crazy things. Now we've made the screen a little bit bigger so that you guys can see what's going on over here. But if I select this instrument and I make this waveform slightly smaller, so let's make it 32 bytes long. Let's make a quiet square wave. Right. Let's set the volume lower because we're doing more than one channel. Right. And let's just write a chord. All right. So that's our first chord. And let's use copy and paste, the magic of copy and paste, to put some more notes in. So if you're familiar with writing music in a standard way, using like a piano roll editor, you've got 16 steps until the pattern or the block restarts, and you've got 4 of those within each pattern. So much like if you're looking at Logic from the side, you can see the different divisions between the different beats that you're putting in. It's just down rather than across. So if you're already writing music, you can fit in pretty well. If you just remember that things are divided by 16, it makes your life easier. So here's we're on the 32nd step, and we're just going to change one note in the chord. Or should we change 2? Let's change 2. Let's change 2. There we go. So now we go from that. Just one note. Yeah. And then we're going to do another pattern. So we're going to duplicate it. Control D, the magic of Control D. All right, and then we're going to go back to where we were, D. Let's change it to a DFA chord. And now, if we press that, it will go. We'll go to the next pattern. Oh, that's pleasant. And let's go down again. So we're in DFA, right? Let's change that to. There we go. So now we've got. And you can see the notes running past the screen. Hopefully I haven't made a mistake. That's fine. That will loop. Right. And then what you could do is make another sample, and we'll draw another sample here. And we'll make it even smaller. Let's make a little 16-byte sample. And then we're going to make a little waveform like that. And then we're going to create an instrument. Here we go. So if I go here, volume, the instrument goes down like that. So what we're going to do is just set the volume to fade out. Right? And what we're going to do, we're just going to clone the same notes that we've got in the chord on this channel. So we're just going to have a little arpeggiated section with the same notes. So we're just going to paste that down. The Musicians Union's going to kill me for this because I'm giving away all the speed composition secrets. We changed, you see, each E to a D because we've changed the chord structure. Okay. And let's go here and go D, F, A. So we're going to do that. This should sound quite pretty when it's running. And you could do this faster, but I'm deliberately going slower than I would do normally to show you this. Here we go. It's just to show you. So it's all maths, really, music. So it's very pleasant, you know. I'm in an RPG and I've just discovered I need to go on a quest without my father. Okay, so once you've got backing added in, you can then start playing around with maybe adding another sound into the mix, right? So if we make a little 32-byte waveform, and we're going to draw another one. Right, and then we're going to give it a volume. We're going to fade it out. We're going to fade it out for quite a long time, right? And then we're going to tell it not to stop itself when a new note occurs, right? So now we go. You know, you can start writing little accompaniments, right? But we can also make that note vibrate a little bit. That'll give it a bit more tonal interest, right? So the important thing when you're experimenting with software like this is just to get your hands dirty and actually jump in and just have a go. It being free helps. So now we've got a vibrating waveform. So now if we play this song, and then go to the instrument, so if we go into the tune, we can start laying in some notes in our patterns, right? So let's start down here, so we can go. Let's see. It's like making music with doorbells. There we go. Occasionally you'll hit a bum note, which I'm sure I've done just now. Yeah, that's not right. So let's change that. Come on, HDMI. You know you can keep up. It's only a 10-year-old program. Jesus. There we go. Pretty. Right, so while that's playing, I'm just going to show you some other effects that you can do to instruments as well. So let's look at this lead, right? We can make that lead a lot more interesting by sticking a filter effect on it. Okay, so here we go. Let's put a filter effect on it. So if I press play, right? So we put filter on, and you can see this is the filter, right? The length of the note is about yay. And then if we bend the filter down, then and then we play with resonance and cutoff, that's much more interesting. And suddenly it feels a lot more dynamic. And again, this is all being done in real time, so you could control this in code as well. So you could have the journey starting out, and he's positive, and everything's going well. And as it gets more negative, the filters start kicking in. He's starting to doubt himself. Right? You can also do variation on volume. So now we've got every time I hit a note, it might be slightly quieter than the last one. Gives you a bit of flexibility. Makes it sound more human. You can also make the waveform have multiple points. There we can go like this. Now it sounds a bit more threatening. And you can also loop a part of it if you wanted, which is quite fun. So we can go over here. Now we can have so now it's going twinkle in the background as it fades out. And it's like a weird sort of echo, yeah? Okay. So if we go back into our little thing, stop it again. So the next thing we're going to look at is just doing a little bit of percussion. And we're not even going to use, we won't use real samples because we don't need to. So let's just explain another thing. Like, you can load anything as a sample, right? It doesn't have to be a real sound. You just load a bit of data. Right, so let's do that. Okay, so I'm gonna do another sample here, and I'm just gonna load a picture. Let's see. What have I got? What have I got in my pictures? I've got some VHS box art. Let's see. The Monster Squad. The box art for the Monster Squad. So I'm not going to hurt you by playing this, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut a big section of it out, right, like this. And then we're just going to use the front part, yeah? Right? That's quite nice, isn't it? What could we possibly be making? Right, okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to loop a part of the sound, like this. And then we're going to use an instrument to bring the volume down, okay? Because we don't want it to be that loud, right? It's pretty good. Thank you, Monster Squad. Cool. So if we go through, we're going to just put some percussion in. And it's a very simple rule for percussion. You know, if you can count up to 16, you should be able to do it. So let's make sure you're on the right instrument. All right, so here we go. So if we go like that, and we're just going to paste that down. And what that's saying is I'm going to play a snare every 8 notes. Now we're starting to sound a bit more dynamic, yeah? But we can make that sound quieter. But we can also change the pitch. Oh, that's much better. Right? So very quickly, we'll just make another little element to put in there, just to show you how easy it is. So the other thing I love about doing music in this way is it makes you think differently. If I was in a piano roll, I'd have written a completely different song, even if I had the same brief, because of the way that you work in these pieces of software. Also, if you're sitting in a piece of, have I got? Yep, great. If you're using this piece of software, you've got a way of working that pushes you in a different direction, which is really healthy, I think, because you can get very stuck in your ways. A lot of composers are. If I cut that and make another one here, there we go. Oh yeah. Oh, that bit there. I don't even know what that is. Oh yeah. Right. Let's use that. So, but I've not rehearsed this. I actually had no idea. It's quite funny. Right, here we go. There we go. So what we're doing is we're using standard gaps between notes. Is that right? Yeah. We're getting quite abstract now. Right? And you have to remember as well, you have to copy your percussion to the new channel. It won't loop on its own. So very quickly, just before we finish. La, 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 la. Right, over here. And then we'll change that ever so slightly. So it's on thingy, thing, and then make that really small, and then. There you go. So we've made a tune. And it's very cute. So I could have done something even more saccharine, but I thought it was more fun to do this. And remember, this is completely created by drawing waveforms and taking existing data and just pulling it apart and applying effects to it. Okay? Okay, I think I'm almost out of time. I will play you one final thing. Right, so, that's, using some rules to compose very, very simple music, but then you can get more involved and be a bit more experimental and weird. So here's, not many people have heard this, a preview of one of my album tracks, which is done using these same techniques, right? So again, everything in this is a chiptune. It's new, it's not out yet. Okay. What happens when people that work in games and media music get a chance to write an album is it comes out weird. It's finally you can do what you want rather than what somebody else is asking for. So It's fairly weird. It's interesting. So everything in this tune is just a drawn waveform, okay? There's like one real sample, I think. If I move along while the tune's playing, I can show you the notes occurring. So you can literally dive in, see how the thing was composed. If we look at the waveform for number 5, let's look at the waveform for number 5. That's what that lead sound looks like. It's just literally a waveform that's going like this that I drew. And there's a bit of percussion, there's a few percussion sounds in this. There's a sample of a snare. This is generated noise. It's using retrig to do hi-hats. Cool. White noise from the C64. Get back again? There we go. Another thing that's very important if you are a composer or an artist or anybody else that creates things for people is having the ability to work in a wide range of styles. Being a lecturer, I have to emphasise that to students a lot, but being just stuck doing one particular thing or one particular type of music is never good if you want to get work. It's almost finished. And what this is a very slow arpeggio. So because the song's set to a slow tempo, the arpeggio is then a slow effect, which is another nice tip for doing your own chippy music. There you go. Okay. Any questions?
So the version of Pro Tracker, that's on the 4 tracks. You can get side versions of it, that 40, doesn't it? We can have more multiple tracks on it.
You can on the Commodore 64. You can have stereo SID tracking, which is quite fun.
I downloaded the demo
Yeah.
a while back on PC as well. There multiple tracks.
Yeah, you can have like and there's Fast Tracker. The same guys ported Fast Tracker, which is a very famous old tracking software for DOS back in the day. That's how old I am. But yeah, basically it's a great thing to explore, but also it's a very useful thing to know about in terms of technology, because it might be stuff that you could use in your own games. And it's also, if you've never done music before, it's quite a fun way to get into it, because there's thousands of tunes on the internet written by thousands of people in this format that can teach you about writing music. And you can blow them open, all the sounds are there, all the samples are there. It's not just chip music, yeah?
There's that really famous mods library website. I forgot the name of it.
Oh, I think it's the mod library. Yeah. It's huge.
As a kid.
Yeah, it's absolutely massive. Yeah. It's absolutely gigantic archive of demo scene music and there's the whole tracker scene back in the 90s. This was how we used to swap music before the internet, when bulletin boards were around. You would send people tunes in this way. And part of it also was driven by the speed of modems, because you wouldn't want to download something that's 8 meg when you could swap a disc with someone or get a tiny chip tune and still enjoy some music.
Kilobytes, tens sometimes.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that I had back from load states, there were 4, I remember there being anyway, 4 main formats: XM, S3M, .mars, and .it.
Yeah. This is IT.
This is IT, yeah.
What I'm showing you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never understood the difference.
So Impulse Tracker, as a format for the PC, has the more complicated implementation of tracker playback, where it can do things like real-time filters, It can do pitch control via an instrument. It can do volume envelopes and new note actions. Fast Tracker 2 can't do filters, and it doesn't do new note actions in the same way that Impulse Tracker does. And Impulse Tracker, probably from a technical point of view, was a more technically brilliant program, but Fast Tracker ended up being more popular. A bit like Betamax and VHS.
Yeah.
But Fast Tracker is a lovely format too, and many times over the years I've been asked to write XM modules for games because they might have a particular replay routine that only plays that particular format of tracker music. Any other questions? Everyone looks completely freaked out. Okay, brilliant. Thanks a lot, yeah? Cheers.